The package came on a Wednesday. Not a holiday. Not a birthday. Just one of those middle of the week. Nothing ever happens here Wednesdays. The kind where the biggest thrill was reheating last night's chili and wondering if the neighbor's new dog would bark at the recycling truck again. I was home early, which almost never happened. The school had called in a half-day for teacher workshops, which meant I got to leave the chaos of adolescent hormones and ungraded geometry tests behind and enjoy 3 hours of unexpected silence. A rare treat for a high school math teacher with 15 years of chalk dust in his lungs. I didn't hear the truck, just the soft thump of a package hitting the front porch. No knock, no doorbell, just enough noise to make me look up from my mug of stale coffee and the dull ache in my spine. The box wasn't big, about the size of a shoebox. No sender, just my name, handwritten, all caps, sharp, deliberate letters that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Weird thing was, my wife's name wasn't on it, just mine. Now, I'm not the suspicious type, not naturally, but something about the way the cardboard felt in my hands, too light, too still, set off a little alarm in my brain. I carried it to the kitchen, set it down next to the bowl of apples Monica had let rot for weeks, and opened it with the steak knife we never used. Inside was a photograph, a single glossy 5x7 print, tucked between two pieces of stiff white cardboard. No note, no explanation, just the photo. Monica, and someone else, laughing, leaning in close, on a beach I'd never been to. She was wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, and smiling like I hadn't seen her smile in years. And the man? He was holding her hand, not like a friend, not like a coworker, like someone who knew exactly how many freckles she had on her shoulder. The kind of grip that doesn't belong to a stranger. I didn't move, didn't blink. My heartbeat slowed to something surgical. Then I turned the photo over. 2 words. You deserve the truth. That's it. No name, no date. Just that quiet, cruel little sentence that hits harder than a 1,000-page confession. I stood there for a long time. Long enough for the coffee to go cold. Long enough for the neighbor's dog to bark twice, then give up. When Monica got home an hour later, I was still at the table, still staring at the photo. She walked in, dropped her purse like she always did, kicked off her heels like she always did, and said the same thing she always said. Hey babe, what's for dinner? I didn't say anything. She came around the corner, saw the photo, and froze. Not even a flicker of confusion. Just stillness. Then she reached for the chair opposite me, sat down slowly, pressed her hands together like she was praying. I can explain, she said. I didn't look at her. Not yet. I didn't ask for an explanation. Silence. The kind that fills every corner of a room until even the walls feel like they're holding their breath. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was the beginning of the end. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid of that. I felt ready. After 20 minutes of silence, she finally spoke again. His name is Carter, Monica said, like she was introducing me to a new brand of toothpaste. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. Funny how people always say that like it's supposed to help. Like the absence of meaning makes betrayal less sharp. I finally looked at her. Her eyes were red, but not from crying. From anticipation. Like she'd already cried in someone else's arms and was saving face here. You want me to believe this was an accident? I asked. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I laughed, a small, humorless sound. You say that like you tripped and fell mouth first into emotional intimacy. She didn't flinch. That scared me more than tears ever could. She reached for the photo. I let her. Watched as she turned it over in her hands like it might offer her a different truth. How long? I asked. A pause. 3 months. I nodded. Then did the math. 3 months. That meant right around our anniversary. The weekend she said her sister needed space to talk. The late yoga sessions. The new perfume that just made her feel grown up again. 3 months is long enough to build a habit. Long enough to forget how many lies you've told to keep it going. I leaned back in the chair, the one we bought at IKEA together after arguing for 40 minutes over color options. I'd wanted something darker. Monica said maple brightened the room. It didn't. So what now? I asked. She blinked. I don't know. Of course she didn't. The decision was always supposed to be mine. That way she could feel absolved either way. If I left, she tried. If I stayed, it was forgiveness, proof of love. I wasn't going to give her the comfort of being the victim in her own mess. I stood up, slow and deliberate, like I was getting up from an exam I knew I'd passed while the rest of the class still scrambled for answers. I'll be gone by tomorrow morning. That made her panic. Wait, what? You can't just walk out. No, I said. You walked out. I just hadn't noticed until someone sent me the receipt. I didn't pack that night. I didn't rage or storm off. I sat on the couch with the TV off and the lights low. Let the quiet seep into my bones like a cold front. It was the same room we'd decorated together. Same throw pillows. Same burnt orange blanket she used to curl under with me on winter nights. But it didn't feel like my home anymore. Just a movie set where the lead actor had been replaced halfway through the season. Around midnight, she came into the room. Said nothing. Just stood there. I didn't look at her. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. And I replied without missing a beat. That's the thing about intentions, Monica. They don't change outcomes. She left the room. I stayed. Because sometimes staying in the silence is louder than anything you could ever say. I left before the sun came up. Didn't even wait for coffee to finish brewing. Just grabbed my duffel bag, wallet, and the last shred of self-respect I could find tucked under the keys to the house I no longer belonged in. She was asleep. Or pretending to be. Hard to tell with Monica. She'd always been good at lying with her eyes closed. The road out of our neighborhood looked different in the morning fog. Quieter. Honest. Like it wasn't trying to convince me everything was okay. I didn't have a plan. Just a direction, a way. But let me tell you something about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It messes with your memory. You start looking back at your life like a crime scene. Every smile becomes suspicious. Every late-night laugh feels like evidence you missed. At 6:43 a.m., I pulled into the diner down by the river. The kind of place that smells like burnt toast and regret. The waitress called me Han and refilled my coffee 3 times without asking. It was the kind of kindness that makes a grown man want to cry. But I didn't. I stirred cream into my cup like it was an equation that might solve me. That's when the phone buzzed. Monica, you left your glasses. It wasn't about the glasses. It never is. She wanted to see if I'd respond. If I was still reachable. If I was still hers in some small, pathetic way. I put the phone down. Let the message sit there like a puddle I refused to step in. I stayed at a roadside motel that smelled like bleach and old secrets. Room 117. 1 key. 1 bed. 1 man suddenly realizing he didn't know who he'd been married to. Or worse, who he'd become trying to keep her. That night, I stared at the ceiling and played back the last 6 years like a film reel skipping in the middle. Not looking for clues. Just trying to remember the last time I felt like someone's first choice. I couldn't. And that was the part that broke me more than her cheating ever could. When you realize you've been fighting for a seat at a table, you set yourself. Around midnight, I opened my email. Not for work. Not for distractions. Just habit. That's when I saw it. A name I hadn't read in years. Lucas Carmine. A name Monica used to drop in stories, harmless little anecdotes about college. The one who never got over her. The one she said had too much ego, not enough discipline. Apparently, he had just enough now. There it was. A forwarded confirmation email. Lucas, your payment for the weekend cabin has been confirmed. Guest name, Monica. Sent from our shared Amazon account. She forgot to switch profiles. I stared at that message for 10 straight minutes. A cabin. A name. A timestamp from the same weekend she told me she needed solo time to reset her mental health. And just like that, it wasn't an affair anymore. It was a campaign. Planned. Funded. Executed. This wasn't a mistake. This was architecture. I always thought the worst part would be the confrontation. The shouting. The crying. The how could you? And it didn't mean anything. But turns out, the real gut punch is the absence of all that. It's the quiet. The calm. It's sitting alone in a motel room with the AIC humming like it's trying to fill the space where your marriage used to live. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the email confirmation from Lucas Carmine and reading it like it might rewrite itself. Like maybe it said Monica C. and not Monica Keller. Like maybe it was a different cabin, a different woman, a different life. But no. Same woman. Same smile. Same betrayal. I looked up Lucas on Facebook. I don't know why. Curiosity, I guess. Or masochism. His profile picture was exactly what you'd expect. Aviator sunglasses, a craft beer in hand, and a grin that said he never grew out of frat parties. One of those guys who always gets mistaken for charming instead of manipulative because he's tall and loud enough to be mistaken for confident. And there she was. Monica, smiling in a tagged photo from 2 weeks ago, half turned toward him with that familiar tilt of the head she used to give me back when we still laughed together in grocery aisles. She looked happy, or at least photograph happy. It's a strange thing, seeing the person you love in someone else's frame. Like bumping into your ex at a restaurant and realizing they still order your favorite dish, but they're sharing it with someone new. I shut the laptop, got up, paced. I kept thinking. I taught kids how to solve complex proofs, how to untangle chaos into clean, balanced equations. And somehow, I missed the math on my own life. I'd ignored the variables, skipped the parentheses, trusted the constants when they were quietly shifting behind my back. I was a man who trusted the wrong numbers. At 3 a.m., I grabbed the keys and drove. No destination, just a moving orbit around my own implosion. The streets were empty, strip malls all asleep, gas stations flickering under orange sodium lights. I passed the library where I used to tutor on weekends, the coffee shop where Monica and I had our first fight, over a crossword clue, of all things. She hated being corrected. I thought that was cute back then. I pulled into a 24-hour diner, slid into a booth that smelled like burnt syrup and teenage heartbreak, and ordered black coffee. The waitress called me sweetheart and didn't ask if I wanted cream. That's the kind of woman who's seen a lot of 3 a.m. faces like mine. While waiting, I took out my phone. I opened notes, and I started a list, not of what she'd done, but of what I'd noticed and ignored. The gym membership she suddenly needed after 10 years of saying treadmills were boring. The extra charger she bought to keep at work. The lipstick she never wore for me. The way she used to hum around the house and then didn't. The way she used to correct my stories and then let them go unchallenged. The way she laughed with other people. Louder. Freer. I scrolled through it. Added another. How she stopped saying us and started saying I. By 4:12 a.m., I had 12 bullet points and a decision forming in the back of my head like a slow wave. Not rage. Not revenge. Precision. You see, I'd never been the emotional one in the relationship. I was the rock. The spreadsheet. The alarm clock. The guy who remembered to change the air filters and schedule dentist appointments. She used to call me predictable, like it was a joke. But that was before she started playing house with a man who probably thinks mutual funds are a kind of workout. By 5 a.m., I was back in the motel room, sitting on the floor, laptop open again. I created a new email address. Not to contact her. Not to warn Lucas. But to begin. See, Monica and I still share the same financial software. The same password manager. She never changed it, because I always handled that stuff. I was the human firewall. So I logged in. Nothing dramatic. No account draining. No fireworks. Just observations. The shared credit card? Still being used for cabin groceries. Bottled wine. Fancy cheese. A hammock, of all things. They bought a hammock. Like betrayal was a picnic. I opened the shared cloud drive. Found a folder labeled June. Inside were photos from the trip she said was with her sister. One of them caught her mid-laugh, backlit by firelight. Lucas's hand on her waist. My stomach didn't drop anymore. It clenched. Hardened. I copied everything. Not for leverage. For record-keeping. See, if she was going to reframe our marriage as a growth experience, I wanted to have a copy of the raw footage before she edited the story. I wasn't going to send it to her. Not yet. But when the time came, when she sat across from me with a lawyer and tried to explain why the man who paid the mortgage and held her hand through 2 miscarriages just didn't make her happy anymore, I'd slide that folder across the table and say nothing. Because silence, I was learning, can cut cleaner than words. At 6:30 a.m., I showered, shaved, and stared into the mirror for a long time. I didn't recognize the man looking back, but I liked him more than I expected, because he finally looked awake. Monica always said I lacked spontaneity, that I was too calculated, that I thought in straight lines while she floated in abstract shapes and watercolor moods. Maybe she was right, but straight lines? They get you places. Maps are made with them. Buildings stand on them. And when things start to collapse, it's the man with a blueprint who knows where the exits are. So I started drafting mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Jared, my closest friend, the kind of guy who'd helped me move a couch in the rain and never asked for gas money. If I told him, he'd ask questions. He'd give me that just talk to her look that married people give each other, like communication is always the cure. But this wasn't a communication issue. This was an evacuation. Day 1 of the plan started with a storage unit. It was small, 8 by 10, concrete walls, rolling door. Just enough space to fit a life in boxes. I paid cash. Signed under a different name, an old high school alias I used once on a prank pizza delivery. No ID required. Just a signature and the right amount of caution in your eyes. Day 2, I started removing myself. Little things first. A few clothes. My childhood photo album. The stack of letters my mother sent me in college. Anything with sentiment or evidence of my existence. Nothing big enough to notice. Just enough that, if you were looking for me, you'd feel like something was missing, but couldn't put your finger on it. On day 4, I called my bank and asked about opening a new account under a business name. Said I was consulting now, needed to keep personal and business funds separate. They didn't blink. I transferred $9,700 over. Just under the threshold that gets reported to the IRS. Twice. Then came the apartment. Furnished. Month to month. Bare bones. The kind of place you rent when you're between lives. The kind of place no one visits unless they're either hiding or healing. I wasn't sure which one I was yet. Maybe both. I told Monica I had a math conference coming up in Boise. She barely looked up from her phone. Just nodded and said, "Okay, have fun. Don't forget your charger this time." She didn't ask what day I was leaving. Didn't ask when I'd be back. That's how far we'd fallen. The morning of the conference, I packed the car with the rest of my things. Nothing dramatic. No tearful goodbye. I even left the bed made, the pillows fluffed, the laundry folded. I wrote a note. Just 3 words. "You'll understand soon." I didn't sign it. She'd know it was me. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she'd think it was from Lucas. Maybe that was better. By the time she got home that evening, I was already 10 miles into nowhere, coasting towards silence with the windows cracked and the radio off. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a man who finally stopped bailing water from a boat he didn't build. That night, I sat in my new place and stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, listening to the mechanical click of rotation. Steady. Predictable. Like me. It wasn't a victory lap. It was just quiet. And for the first time in months, that was enough. She texted me the next day. "Monica, where are you?" No greeting. No question mark. Just those 4 words that dripped with entitlement. Like I owed her my location. Like she'd misplaced a belonging. I didn't answer. 2 hours later. "Monica, is this about the cabin?" So she had figured out what I knew. Still no apology. No confession. Just trying to get ahead of the narrative. 3 more messages came by sundown. "Monica, you're being dramatic." "Monica, can we talk like adults?" "Monica, I didn't expect you to overreact like this." Overreact. You ever notice how cheaters love that word? Overreacting. As if trust were a faucet you can fix with an apology and a YouTube tutorial. I muted her number. 2 days passed. Then came the email. A long one. Titled simply, "Explanation." It read like a Yelp review of our marriage. Safe, but boring. Reliable, but unexciting. She wrote that she needed passion. That she missed feeling seen. That with Lucas, she felt alive again. Alive again. As if I'd been keeping her in a morgue instead of a mortgage. She ended it with, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to understand." I didn't respond. Because I did understand. That was the problem. I spent the next few days adjusting. New routines. New streets. New silence. I bought a cheap desk. Set it near the window. Started tutoring online to keep my head sharp. The first student was a senior from Kentucky who wanted help with AP calculus. Her screen was cracked. Her headphones too loud. But she said thank you like she meant it. That night, I made a dinner for one. Sat at the small table. And didn't feel lonely. Because there's a difference between being alone and being free. Somewhere in that dusty unit, under a box labeled wedding, I had a folder. Inside it, every receipt I'd collected from the last 3 months. Every charge to the joint card. Every printout of her social post she forgot I could see. I wasn't planning revenge. But I wasn't planning forgiveness either. I was planning records. Because the day she decided I was forgettable was the day I stopped being predictable. And the man she thought she walked away from was just getting started. By week 2, Monica had officially gone into what I call PR mode. That's when someone doesn't want you back. They want back control of the story. The messages shifted tone. Less accusation, more nostalgia. "Monica, I keep thinking about Charleston. That bed and breakfast with the slanted floor and the orange cat. You laughed so hard when the shower sprayed sideways. I miss that laugh. Ah yes, the good old days. The emotional breadcrumb trail. Classic maneuver. Tell him he's lovable just enough to forget you unloved him." I read every word. Then deleted it. I wasn't looking for a rerun, especially not when the original season ended with my character replaced mid-script. But here's the thing about disappearing. You don't get to stay gone without being missed. Eventually, your absence grows legs. Starts walking into conversations, sneaking into group texts, whispering questions down the hall. That's when it happened. Phone call from Jared. Dude, he said, did you really just leave? I was sitting in my apartment eating cold pizza and fixing an algebra worksheet for a kid in Denver. Define leave, I replied. He exhaled like someone deflating a beach ball. Monica called me. She said you bailed. That she's worried. I almost laughed. She's worried about optics. Okay, man. Look, Jared said carefully. I'm not picking sides, all right? But just talk to her. Be the bigger person. I set the pizza down. I was the bigger person, Jared. That's the problem. I spent years carrying things alone, her doubts, her boredom, her ego. Now I'm just done lifting. Silence. Then he said, you don't sound angry. I'm not. You sound clear. I finished. That's the word you're looking for. I didn't hang up. I let the silence do the heavy lifting until Jared got uncomfortable enough to say, well, if you ever want to talk, and trailed off into the ether. I appreciated it. I did. But I didn't need conversation. I needed distance. Monica didn't post anything for a while. I know because I checked. It wasn't out of weakness. It was reconnaissance. If she was trying to spin this breakup into a redemption arc, I wanted to know where she'd set the spotlight. But the page was quiet. No photos. No sappy captions. No inspirational quotes about growth through loss. And that's when I knew she wasn't healing. She was hiding, probably hoping I'd blink first. What she didn't know was, I wasn't even looking at the screen anymore. I was building. And by week 3, that meant lawyers. See, I hadn't filed anything yet. I didn't need to rush. But I had met with someone, an older gentleman with silver glasses and a disarming voice. The kind of guy who says things like amicable resolution, but also keeps a file labeled strategic leverage. His name was Martin. I slid the folder across his desk. Photos. Statements. Printouts. One particularly damning Airbnb receipt. He didn't even blink. Just opened the folder, nodded, and said, "You've been busy." "No," I said. "I've been observant." He tapped his pen against a highlighted section of her credit card bill. "She paid for that weekend herself?" "With our joint account." He looked up. "That's marital misconduct." "Feels more like mismanagement," I muttered. "But I'll take what I can get." Martin smiled slightly. The kind of smile that belongs to people who win quietly. "Do you want to go for full asset separation?" "I want what's mine," I said. "And I want to make sure she doesn't walk away thinking this was a breakup. This was eviction." He leaned back. "We'll draft the papers. Your terms. If she refuses, we escalate." "Let her refuse," I said. "She's good at pretending things don't exist." That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank whiteboard I'd mounted over the desk. It used to be for work. Notes, equations, calendar reminders. Now, it had 2 columns, before and after. Under before, I listed things like Monica's coffee order, her favorite Spotify playlist, the way she used to doodle when on the phone, her tired laugh versus her genuine laugh, the name of the shampoo she swore by until Lucas said he liked something else. Under, after, I wrote nothing. Not yet. Because I didn't want to define myself by what came next. I wanted to discover it. Week 4, I got another call. This time, from an unknown number. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Hi." Her voice. Soft. Uncertain. "Hi," I said flatly. "Is this how it ends?" she asked. I paused. "No. This is how it continues. Ending was 3 months ago. You just didn't notice." Silence. I made a mistake. I almost admired the simplicity. No excuses. No dramatic apology. Just the quiet confession of a child who broke a toy and hoped no one would remember it was expensive. "You didn't make a mistake," I corrected. "You made a series of choices. I didn't expect you to leave like that." "I know. Why didn't you say anything?" "I did, Monica. Every time I made dinner. Every time I asked how your day was and listened to you complain about people who actually paid attention to you. Every time I folded your laundry and put the socks together because I know you hate mismatched ones." "That's not the same. It's the only language I ever spoke." She sniffled. "You didn't even slam the door," she said. "That's because it wasn't mine to slam anymore." More silence. Then she asked the most dangerous question of all. "Do you still love me?" I looked at the whiteboard. at the empty after column. And I said the only thing that felt true. I think I did. A lot more than you ever understood. A pause. But I don't miss you. And that's starting to feel more important. She didn't reply. And neither did I. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Because some things deserve silence more than closure. 2 days after the call, I got served. Not coffee. Not closure. Papers. She was filing first. Monica had always been competitive. Game nights? She'd fake laugh her way through Pictionary, but the second she lost, she'd suddenly feel tired and leave early. This was no different. I'd disappeared, and now she wanted the last word in ink. The petition was messy, half fiction, half flattery dressed as legalese. She claimed I was emotionally absent, said we'd grown apart, said I left the marital home without explanation, conveniently omitting the fact she'd emotionally sublet that home to a man with a hiking bracelet and a Spotify playlist titled Vibes Only. I didn't get angry. I just called Martin. Expected it, he said calmly. We counter, and we show the receipts. We filed our response with the evidence bundle. Financial records, travel logs, photo documentation. No drama, just math and motive. By the end of the week, her lawyer reached out to settle, which is legal code for she thought she had the upper hand until she realized the floor was missing. The thing about disappearing is this: people romanticize it. They think it's silence under palm trees, a hammock, no Wi-Fi. But real disappearance? It's mundane. You make peanut butter sandwiches in a stranger's apartment. You get new shampoo. You stop answering birthday texts from people who only remember you when your name pops up. But the mundane has one gift: clarity. I started running again. Not metaphorically. Literally. Every morning at 6, before the city woke up, I'd run past grocery stores, laundromats, early commuters. Nobody knew my name. Nobody needed me to pretend. For the first time in a decade, I felt clean. Monica, meanwhile, started spiraling. I know because she unblocked me long enough to send one last volley of texts. I didn't respond, but I read them. Quietly. Like autopsy reports. You could have told me you were going to take it this far. Why are you trying to destroy me? I just wanted a break. You turned it into war. I almost laughed. I hadn't started a war. I just left the battlefield and took my armor with me. Our court date arrived on a Thursday. Cold and gray, the kind of morning that feels like a dare. Monica showed up in soft colors. A pastel blouse. Hair curled just enough to say, I'm the reasonable one. Lucas wasn't there, but the sin of him was all over her. Expensive cologne and unearned confidence. I wore a navy jacket. No tie. Clean-shaven. Quiet. The judge read through our filings. He asked questions. Monica played it cool until Martin slid a folder across the table with printed hotel confirmations, timestamps, bank withdrawals, and yes, 2 screenshots of her Instagram stories saved from her cabin trip. The judge leaned back, adjusted his glasses, and said the words I'd been waiting for. Given the evidence, I see no justification to penalize Mr. Keller for vacating the property. The financials stand in his favor. I recommend expedited division of assets on his terms. Translation: Monica, you lit the fire. He just walked out of the house before it burned down. Her expression didn't crack, but her fingers twitched. That's the thing about people like her. They only flinch when no one's watching. 3 months later, a box showed up at my new door. No return address. My name, written in her handwriting, looped and careful, like she thought presentation might soften content. Inside was our wedding photo. Just one. No note. No explanation. I stared at it for a while. We were smiling. Young. Doomed. Her hand on my chest like she owned the oxygen in my lungs. I flipped it over. Blank. Even now. No accountability. Just implied sentiment. See? We were real once. Sure, we were. But so is Ash. I slid the photo into the fireplace, watched it curl and blacken, and poured myself a glass of bourbon. 1 ice cube. No toast. Later that week, I drove out to the coast. Stood by the water, the wind cutting sharp across my face, and thought about the man she thought I was. Stable. Predictable. Disposable. And the man I had become. Not angry. Not wounded. Just gone. Like a storm that changed direction.